Hey friends, it's been a hot second since we've brought you any content. Of course, I was pregnant and now we have a newborn, so life has kind of been a little bit crazy, but we're back. And for those of you who also follow us on social media, you'd know that Zach's been going through some health stuff that we've been investigating for like ever, it feels like. So he's still not 100% healthy, but we're at a point where we at least have really good direction. We have a lot of stuff that we have tested, have tried, and we feel like we're in a pretty good place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So today what I wanted to do was, because I know a lot of people are curious the whole story, I actually wanted to just interview Zach and have him share what's been going on. So Zach, you ready to dive into this?
Go for it.
He was like, what are we doing today? He's like, we didn't plan any video. I'm like, oh no, I'm just going to interview you. We were just going to talk to us. So walk me through, kind of start me from the beginning. You started Carnivore, you did well, and kind of take us through that journey where it stopped working for you.
Well, it actually just, everything worked fine. I was feeling great. Energy was good. Skin was good. Everything was awesome. The big thing was I started having heart palpitations. We couldn't figure out where that was coming from. And, you know, we went through a lot of ups and downs to try to figure out what it was. First, we thought it was iron overload, which it very well could have been. My iron was really high. My ferritin was really high. But I started having other symptoms that would come along. It was kind of odd. It was, I don't know if you remember what they all were, but bad memory is one of them, right? So I have a hard time remembering. I have really good memory of things that happened in the past, but like, you know, something that happened yesterday, I could like completely forget it.
Just this morning, he was making a list of symptoms and he goes, what's that word for when you don't remember words?
What's the word? What's it called when you don't remember words?
What's it called when you don't remember words? And so that's where he's at with that. But yeah. I think discussing in more detail the severity of the heart palpitations, because I know I see a lot online people talking about that on Carnivore, and I think like it would be really useful for you to differentiate and dive into, well, what's the difference between the heart palpitations you were experiencing versus what somebody might experience, say, with low electrolytes or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think the big one is mine were related to food intolerance. In other words, I was actually becoming allergic to red meat. I would notice when I didn't have red meat, if I would have something else, because I still ate a lot of fish. I ate pork sometimes. When I would eat other things, I wouldn't have this issue. Or if I would eat other things with steak and it wasn't just like a steak by itself, I was not having the response. So that kind of led me down the avenue of figuring out, hey, am I becoming allergic to red meat, and how is this even possible? You know, and at first, I went down the road of thinking it was like, you know, some government conspiracy where they were trying to, you know, make everybody allergic to red meat so you wouldn't eat it, which somebody at the WHO did say was a possibility. So that's the reason why. I have a video of it somewhere where some guy was like, yeah, we can put stuff into meat and make them allergic to it. I was like, that's the one. That's what they did to me. And, so we went and started just like doing tests. You want to kind of go down that?
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that when you talk about something like a food allergy or an intolerance, there's different ways that you can react to it. And this is just my medical aside to it. The most common thing when people think of like, oh, an allergic reaction is like somebody who eats peanuts or has a peanut allergy and they have to use an EpiPen and they're gonna die if they eat that, or very likely could. But there's other intolerances that can happen, and you can have delayed sensitivity reactions. And these ones are ones that can produce other symptoms. So you can get heart palpitations, you can get digestive concerns, gas bloating, constipation, diarrhea, you can get brain fog, skin eruptions, joint pain. Food intolerances can kind of produce any
heart disease.
Yeah. Any sort of symphony of symptoms. And it's just something that you probably have to pay attention to. But so that's what he thought was going on, was that, oh my gosh, maybe I'm becoming allergic to red meat, or maybe it's something being put in this red meat. So he even went through a trial phase where he's like, okay, I'm only going to eat grass fed. I don't know if you remember that part, but
I did a lot of different things. I went only grass fed. I went only, only pork and fish, and then no red meat. And then I've kind of gone on and off, with red meat. Now what I've noticed is, so the big thing is I have to eat it in small amounts. If I eat it in large amounts, and I think this goes back to one of the things is low stomach acid and like kind of a form of pancreatic insufficiency. And a lot of people that have had a ton of vaccines, like if you're in the military, you might have this issue, right? So, I mean, I started off really strong with carnivore, thinking it was, everything was great, and it was, but I just could not break down the food without having reactions after a while.
Yeah, I want to go back to a couple things you said. So, those of you who don't know Zach personally, well, if you met him, if you ever saw him eat in real life, it's like a dog who has never been fed that doesn't actually like swallow their food. And
no, I swallow it.
He swallows it. Sorry,
I chew my food.
No, but I feel like you would inhale it. Like if you could actually just inhale it, I think that you would. And this kind of, I think, I mean, you grew up with how many siblings?
Yeah.
Where if
the military teaches you to eat like that too,
So there's this concept / theory that if you consistently overeat in such a way that you're not digesting properly, and digestion starts with chewing. It starts with simply chewing your food enough to break it down. So the breakdown process happens in more detail as it goes through your digestive system. He was barely chewing anything. Now this can put
this is from a lifetime of
this is a lifetime
barely
of it.
chewing anything. So it's kind of
right. So what was happening, or what we assumed to be happening at some point, was that he was developing some degree of intolerances to these things because of the inability for his digestive system to keep up with the amount that you were
I was
eating.
digesting food. It was the food was making it too far down the digestive tract. And so, I mean, it wasn't like I was like, having bowel movements with whole pieces of food or anything like that. That wasn't happening, but it was definitely, I was reacting to food because anytime food makes it too far down your digestive tract, it doesn't get absorbed. Those proteins get pushed into the blood and they shouldn't be there. So after a while, your body says, okay, well, these are foreign proteins. We have to develop antibodies to fight this off. And then you end up with a food intolerance. And, we also, discovered some other things. We had tests done, discovered I was previously infected with Lyme disease. We don't know how long ago.
We should definitely go home on this point. So I'm not a Lyme specialist. I don't really see Lyme patients in practice, but for a period of time, I had another doctor who was working for me, and she did. So that was kind of one of her little subspecialties. So I started thinking about it more, and I started seeing some of the things that she would talk about as symptoms. And then I would look at Zach and I would be like, oh my gosh, he's lighting up like a Christmas tree when it comes to the Lyme stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's like 7 or 8 co-infections.
Well, we found a lot. So we ended up doing a blood test back in beginning of June, I think it was, right around then. Obviously got the results back. Turns out, yes, you were positive for Lyme, positive for a whole host of other co-infections. Do you remember which ones?
Yeah, Epstein-Barr, anaplasmosis. There's 3 different types of Lyme. There's I don't know. There's a few.
And tell them. You've told me how many.
Rickettsia, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, all of that.
There's a lot. But he grew up in Georgia. And how many tick bites do you remember having as a kid?
Well, I don't know if you remember. I mean, if you know what chiggers are, chiggers are they're tick nymphs basically, and they embed themselves. You can't even see them. They're so small, but they make these little bumps. And I remember having hundreds, if not thousands, of those in my lifetime. So.
But you've had specific tick bites.
Yeah, too. I've had ticks. Plenty of ticks pulled off of me for sure. My dad's pulled a ton of them off of me.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably where I got it from. But you don't. A lot of people have these. The other thing too is that these bacteria, the Lyme bacteria specifically, is one of a few bacteria that feeds off of cholesterol. Okay, not glucose, not sugar, because anytime somebody says, "Oh, you want to fight bad bacteria, what do? Lower the amount of sugar." Okay, well that's great, but Lyme has a little trick up its sleeve where it likes to actually hijack your lipids, and so people that start carnivore and their cholesterol shoots to 300, 400, 500, that could actually be a bacterial infection because it can hijack your lipids and and I was having that. My cholesterol is normal now. It's like 280. I think that 280 is normal, but it was like 4 or 5, close to 500 for 2 or 3 years.
This is an interesting point that I definitely want to bring up, because if you guys, we'll link the other video where I did a really detailed breakdown of his labs and the changes that we saw. And knowing what I know now, there's probably some things in there that I would have evaluated differently. but we just didn't know, right? So I'm going off of the precedent that he's a relatively healthy person doing carnivore, and this is a normal response as we've been told in the carnivore community. Like, we've been told, oh yeah, it's completely normal if you look like this, fit, muscular, relatively healthy overall, and your cholesterol shoots up into 3, 4, 500s.
Yeah, I don't think that's normal at all. Now that I've seen it,
we don't.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me the other day on a live if, like, what I think about the lean mass hyper responder situation. I'm like, my view on that has changed since discovering this, because, as he said, his cholesterol has dropped into the 200s now after we did IV and oral antibiotic treatment for Lyme.
For like a month.
His cardiac inflammatory markers went down. We saw improvement in these numbers. Yeah. So again, if he was a quote unquote lean mass hyper responder, that shouldn't have changed with the addition of treating the Lyme.
I mean, I think your cholesterol should go up when you're on carnivore, which is normal, probably
by about 20%.
Yeah, it's 200 to maybe even close to 300. But I don't think these people that keep posting. I've seen and it's not everyone, but most people are in the 200s, and they have normal normal triglycerides, and they have normal LDL to HDL ratio. But if your LDL just shoots up, there's looking at the Lyme stuff, I mean, there's like so many undiagnosed cases of it. But if you start carnivore and that's a wall that you hit, this could very well be one of the reasons why. And there's so many other. It's not just Lyme. There's tons of infections that people have that you're not aware of, and you have to get these specialty tests that are very, very expensive in order to find out if you have it. So,
yep, definitely. Take a quick pause. Sorry for the pause. We had to tend to the baby. So back to the testing. Tell us roughly, how much does somebody expect to spend if they wanted to get comprehensive Lyme testing, and maybe go into the difference between like what one doctor who's not specialized in Lyme might order versus a specialized one?
Well, I mean, the blood tests there's one that's specific to just like tick-borne illnesses, which is what I did. And that test, I believe, was like $1,000 to $1,500, depending upon where you get it. But yeah, there's also I forget the name of it. It's like a blot test or something. But there's a specific Lyme test that is it's like 50% effective though. So you can take it and it'll say you don't have it, and if you had the infection previously, it's not going to tell you. So that's kind of a useless test. So what the test that I did looks for is actual antibodies from different bacteria and viruses and stuff, and that seems to be the best way to know if you've had it in the past, as opposed to like have an actual active infection.
Yeah, and I think that's worth noting too, that there is a difference in the testing between, again, current, present, new infection versus something that is more latent and chronic, right? Maybe share with people some of the things that you learned in some of your Lyme research, as far as what sort of treatments are out there, what some of the Lyme literate doctors do.
Well, I mean, there's so much information that you don't really know what to do. There's a lot of people that believe that you're supposed to take antibiotics for like a month to 6 months or however long until you start to feel better. Most of the people that I researched and found that did that didn't have an improvement in symptoms. They actually got worse, and this probably has a lot to do with just because you're destroying your microbiome. I think that a lot of newer doctors now are looking at like herbs and all that kind of stuff, and I tried some of those. That's just as hard on the body as some of the antibiotics. I think sometimes they're even worse. Because a lot of those they're plant-based toxins, and the first time I took one, I don't remember what herb it was, but it was like specific. It's like a Lyme herb protocol, and I took it, and I was like, man, I feel terrible. My body, I'm aching everywhere, and it's like, why is this happening to me? And it's like, oh yeah, because I just took in some plants, and it's these plant toxins that actually kill the bacteria. And it's like, wow, okay. I mean, that makes sense, but it also had a lot of other side effects that came with it that, that totally wasn't worth it.
I think that you should share, if you don't mind, a little bit more about what treatments you personally tried, and then both, because I know you noticed some positive effects, both the positives and the negatives.
Well, I mean, the antibiotics, they kind of take you on a ride themselves, and it's pretty bad. Just I think a lot of the symptoms get worse before they start to feel better. I don't really know like what everything that I tried. I think for a while I was like throwing everything but the kitchen.
Blur.
Yeah, throwing everything but the kitchen sink at it. But
there was oral antibiotics. There was IV antibiotics.
A lot of herbs.
There was a lot of herbal antivirals, antibacterials.
I did try cutting out red meat. That didn't, make any difference at all.
Oh, it didn't.
I didn't have the heart palpitations, but I think a lot of what happens with Lyme is that it moves and changes and mimics different things, and you might think that you have this disease or that disease because all the symptoms match, and then next week it all changes, and you're like, oh, I have all these things now.
I think that's certainly worth mentioning because people are probably like, okay, wait, you were just talking about leaky gut and gut issues. You're talking about not digesting your food properly. How are these related? And it's like,
yes, they're all related. They're all related to that. Yeah. Lyme's Lyme just any soft tissue in the body, it destroys it and it tears at it. So basically Lyme likes cholesterol. So it attacks your brain, your nervous system, your muscles. It's not a typical bacteria that's like in your blood floating around causing an infection. It's very, very different. So it doesn't show up on a blood. I took a what do they call that when you test the blood culture. Right, I did that. Nothing came up on that. So I mean, blood culture, you can get that done. It doesn't show up on it. Lyme is very, very tricky, and it likes to hang out in spots that you normally wouldn't look.
Like the brain. Talk about what it does in the brain.
Yeah, I mean, it attaches to the myelin sheath around nerve fibers in your brain. Can cause actual the like lesions. A lot of people get.
That looks like MS.
Yeah, and actually, I saw a study from Harvard. 10 out of 10 patients they tested that had multiple sclerosis were positive for Lyme. 10 out of 10. So it could be very well like the cause of a lot of different illnesses and diseases that we are just not aware that it's causing. Parkinson's. There's a lot of Parkinson's people that have past Lyme infections.
Yeah.
Anything that do with the brain.
And I will make a comment. Because there have been people who have made comments on our YouTube channel that he fidgets a lot. Y'all, it's Lyme. Like, leave him and his fidgets alone. He can't control it. Like, he just can't. He can't sit still, and it's fine. It's just Lyme. So it sucks. It's what we've done in our marriage relationship is we've actually looked back at some of the things in his life and been like, oh my gosh, that was the Lyme. That was just. It was just presenting in a certain way. Yeah. Even like fights that we've had that have made no sense to me. Like, why are you behaving like this? Why are you acting like this?
So anything that's attacking your nervous system is going to put you into fight or flight. And that's the hard part to realize is that, and I think a lot of people start carnivore because of some of the same issues and the reasons why I started carnivore. And initially it was like, oh wow, all these things went away. It was awesome, But I think that it kind of just like it covered some stuff up and uncovered some things, but it didn't really give me the whole picture until I started, getting into it. I think carnivore does help with Lyme. I think that it can, if you go overboard with it, like I did, I think it can make it worse initially. I still promote it, and I still think it's the best way to eat. I still limit plants at any cost. The problem with me is that after a while, I started eliminating things that were causing me problems. You start taking all these things away, and then what you're left with is nothing, right? And you have to eat something. So, imagine being allergic to red meat when all you ate was red meat for a year, and you love it, right? It makes you feel good. Well, now I can't do that because every time I eat it, within 3 or 4 hours, I was having heart palpitations. I couldn't sleep. I was getting all these different things happening. Rapid onset heart disease. I had all these different things that were coming on. And it was all due to one specific type of bacteria that was in my blood, in my body.
Yeah. So it becomes a tricky balancing act for him right now. So now he's what I would call a flexible hyper carnivore, where you're still eating at least 70% meat, and it's having to vary, like very small amounts of red meat, though you will have it. Fatty piece of chicken, eggs, pork.
I'll give you an example. Like today, and I'm eating 3 meals a day now, just because I don't think that starving.
He needs to eat smaller meals to digest them properly.
Yeah. So before I was eating larger meals, and that's difficult. But this morning I had eggs and steak, but just a small amount. And then for lunch, I had swordfish and like a couple of pickles. So that's all I'm able to eat without. If I overeat, I have all these different kinds of cascades of things that happen.
One of the experiments he actually did with adding in like fermented vegetables was to purposefully slow down the transit time so that he wouldn't get the very pronounced responses that he was getting to meat, when it would digest very quickly and it would affect his heart. And like sometimes he would even just get so tired that he would just go sit on the couch, like you couldn't move him. And this is the most energetic person I've ever met in my life. Like, if he doesn't have energy to do something, it is a problem. So again, this has been a wild bit of experimentation for us. And, if you go back to when we first started Carnivore, you would never think that we would be swapped in our roles, where I am literally only eating like red meat on a daily basis. And he's the one. She
won't eat anything else, And it's like when we first started, she was like, I have to have this fruit. I have to have this pineapple. I have to have this. And it's like, I'm like, no, you don't. And now I would love to eat the way that she does. I would just, because this makes life easier. So, and that's the thing, the dogmatic, thinking or whatever. I mean, I believe in it. I believe that it works. If you're a healthy person, then by all means, be dogmatic about it and do what it is that makes you feel good. But there are, I kept seeing these people that were outliers, and they would say, "Oh, I can't do it. Every time I start carnivore, this happens. This happens." I'm like, I fought through it for so long, and I just muscled my way through it. I was like, no, I'm not gonna let this stop me. And you can't do that, right? You're not stronger than whatever bacteria or infections that you have and you're not aware of. But somebody even said the other day that everybody has these bacteria in their body. It's just a matter of
if it's expressing.
If it's expressed, if you have gene expression, which could be from stress and different things.
I'm curious, and I may test myself again. It's an expensive test. Like, I don't get any special discounts on it. I still have to pay the $1,000 to test myself if I want to do it. Even though I'm a provider, which whatever, it's fine. But I was going to test it on myself just to see, because like he was saying, you may or may not express it. And I feel good. Like, for all intents and purposes, I am healthy, thriving, energetic, feeling great. And I haven't really had any issues, and any like quote unquote health issues that have been directly attributed to any loss of sleep from pregnancy and breastfeeding. Like, that's it. So it'd be interesting to see, because they actually do say that Lyme can be sexually transmitted. And it can also be possibly transmitted through mom to baby. So if that's the case, our whole family could have it, because obviously there's been sexual transmission.
Yep. So you definitely got
it. So another thing that I want you to kind of share with people is maybe just some words of advice for people that are going through this. I know you mentioned like, hey, if carnivore's not working for you, but I also think it might be important for you to also double down on like, well, maybe this is the time to do the healthy things.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's the thing is, you go on, you look at all the big, carnivore people in the space. They're very adamant that it works, and 99% of the time they're probably right, but they can't explain. Like I had conversations with Dr. Chafee. I had actual video chats with.
You had a paid call with Dr. Baker.
Yeah, I paid Dr. Baker to talk to him for 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it was. And I was telling him about my symptoms, and he was like, "I have no idea," right? And it's like, well, yeah. So this is a very real thing, and there's other people that I've seen have these symptoms, and what are they going to do? They're going to go out and they're going to look, carnivore helps all these people with all these different issues, and maybe it does, but if they have a bacteria that's that feeds and thrives off of cholesterol, and you're raising your cholesterol, and it hijacks your cholesterol, and it goes up to 400, and then all of a sudden the inflammation starts to go up, and then your blood vessels are starting to get damaged, and then you have heart disease, like what happened to me. It's probably not the best thing to just carnivore harder, right? I mean, it's, and I have people in my group, a good buddy of mine who's had similar issues. He was having like real weird muscle soreness for no reason when he wasn't working out. He's strict carnivore, and I started going through all the things that I was going through. He's like, man, I have that. And it's just kind of had to open his eyes to that too. And he was thinking, well, in my mind, I think, well, going carnivore eliminated a lot of problems, right? A lot of issues that I've had in my whole life from eating plants and a crappy diet. Now it started something different. It's you're turning things off and you're turning other things on, right? So the problems are changing. They're not going away. They're just changing into something else, and that's they call Lyme the great mimicker because that's what it does. Yeah, I mean, carnivore heart is definitely not the answer to everything, you know.
And I would just like to express like a moment of appreciation for him and all the crap that he's gone through with this, because ultimately it allowed me to have such a really unique perspective as a provider working in this space. Whereas now I can look at so many different angles to actually figure out these root causes because of you. Otherwise, like, you know, I see a lot of other providers in the space who have never had the ability to actually work with carnivores where it went wrong, and who had the ability to sit there and actually, you know, dive in. Because here's the thing, I live with him. I saw him carnivoring harder. I saw him only eating the meat. I saw him doing all of the quote unquote right things and still getting worse. And there is nothing that will shake your world up and make you really reevaluate things and reevaluate your position on things than seeing somebody's real life experience. And so this is my personal default as a provider. Like, I believe the patient. Like, I believe you when you're telling me like you're doing all the things, you're doing all the right things, and that you are having this particular experience. And the like he's saying, the answer is not to carnivore harder, it's to investigate deeper. So that's, you know, thankfully, I think what we've been able to do with this, and why we're sharing this with you, because of course you have your own lives and like you want to get healthy, and maybe this is going to be something that you can now look into with some degree of confidence and see, okay, how can I improve? Right? Cool. Well, I think we'll leave this video out here. We had some other questions that people actually wanted to ask when I told you guys on social media that I was going to do this. You guys actually wanted to know more about our personal story. You wanted to know about like what it's like having a carnivore marriage. You wanted to know how we met. Like, so we'll probably do another video on that. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.